How's it going, guys? My name is Graeme, and a few weeks back I played through the different prototypes of Amnesia Fortnight 2017 from Double Fine. I've explained in many different videos what the whole Amnesia Fortnight deal is, so you can look at some of those earlier videos if you're curious and you're not up to date on it. This video is really meant for people who are aware of what Amnesia Fortnight is and have watched the videos on those different prototypes. I'm going to dedicate a little bit of time to each of the prototypes I played, talk a little bit about what worked, what didn't, and kind of award some overall categories at the end, like which worked the best and which I think was the most fun or which I want to see made into a full actual game. Unfortunately, I can only cover prototypes that I played, so the VR game I have no idea what I'm doing won't be able to make it in, and the multiplayer only game Blowing Up from Misfits Attic. So first up we have The Gods Must Be Hungry, which I think overall is still probably the best pitch going in, possibly across like any of the Amnesia Fortnights. This pitch was just fantastic. It's super cool that they got the guy from Two Player Productions, who normally films the documentaries for Double Fine surrounding both Amnesia Fortnight and the Double Fine adventure, which turned into Broken Age. It's super cool that they picked up someone from the film crew, gave them the opportunity to pitch a game, and then that their pitch got picked. It's kind of inspiring to know that there's like this hidden talent out there, that there was this guy who's a filmmaker who had this awesome game idea in his heart. But I kind of wonder if him being a filmmaker hurt him as a project lead. He's obviously seen how this stuff runs while he's filming the documentaries. I have no idea if he has any experience working on a dev team. The game looked incredible. It had like a great sense of polish to it, and it played relatively smoothly, I suppose. But the game really lacked that direction. As soon as I was plopped in the game, I knew vaguely what I had to do based on the pitch I had seen. If you hadn't seen the pitch, you'd be completely and utterly lost. And even though I knew what the goal was, I was completely and utterly lost. I never knew if I was doing anything right, and trial and error is totally fine, but that only works if you have a starting point, and I felt like I didn't have a starting point. I played the game for 40 minutes, and I figured out a couple things, like how to cook an egg and how to fry a sheet of nori, but there was what was it, 6 different components to your dish? I didn't know how to do most of the components, and I didn't know how to put my dish together. So the prototype was really just frustrating, and it was really hard for me to get into it and enjoy it because I just didn't know what I was doing. Which is kind of ironic when there's a game in the jam that was called I Have No Idea What I'm Doing. I still see potential, but this kind of sloppy prototype makes me wonder whether or not this really should be made into a full game. I still have a lot of faith based on that original pitch, though. That original pitch was that good. It would just require a lot of work and a lot of rebuilding to be fun and worthwhile. Add some better direction to the game, add more challenges. Like, it shouldn't have started with this big whole massive thing. They only had the 2 weeks, though. If it started with something simple that only required like 2 steps and built to this large 6 or 7 step dish that you had to prepare, I think that would work a lot better. This game would work really well with like local multiplayer, with 2 people having to coordinate different parts of the kitchen, like this giant stadium sized kitchen. Or it could be competitive. They could be doing split screen, doing their separate things, trying to prepare the better dish. And then based on like cook times and overall timing of how they put things together, I don't know, if you made it so you actually had to assemble the dish, there could be presentation points. Like, you could be completely competitive. There's still so much potential behind this game, even though the prototype was a bit of a wreck. Next up, I want to talk about Darwin's Inner. This is a game that I wanted to see made out of the prototypes, but I really didn't think would get picked. I saw it as a bit of like a dark horse, and I'm very glad it made it through. Right away, I want to say I'm very disappointed in the space setting they ended up going with. It kind of made sense that you want to have this weird world with a variety of creatures, and rather than having it as a chicken, and then as you hunt the chickens they slowly become flightless, then you have to think about the different like biological mechanics of how that's going to change. It's easier to just make up a creature, because then you have no ties to reality there, and I get why they made that decision, but the original pitch was for something Earth-based and more realistic. As soon as you stick it in space, then all of a sudden it feels like No Man's Sky, or Spore, or Astroneer, or I don't know, a million other games. And it just lost that unique, cool vibe where it was grounded in this reality. It really should have been a human hunter-gatherer, caveman type character going around hunting wild chickens in a nice open Earth environment. Tie in some real world biology. The game Niche works really, really well. It's like pseudo Earth based, but the biology is very real. This game was space based and like loose biology that I could see how it's grounded in like real ecological concepts, but I would have way rather seen a game that stuck way truer to like real Earth parameters and rules. The prototype was well executed, but you could tell they were limited by that 2 weeks. There really wasn't a lot to see, there really wasn't a lot to do, and there wasn't a whole lot that you could have a large effect on. There wasn't enough variety to the creatures, there wasn't enough physical and behavioral attributes that you could have an effect on. You could affect size, speed, and aggressiveness or something like that. If you flesh that out to like a dozen different factors that you can really like skew and gear, maybe not a dozen, 6 or 7, something like that, and then make it real things like chickens and deer and stuff. But if you have like this procedural generation built into the engine, I haven't made any sort of game like this sounds complicated just saying it, but to have it that you could start with like regular deers and regular chickens and turn them into some kind of space alien monstrosity because you totally skewed the engine one way or the other, that would be way more interesting to see. I don't care about seeing an alien turn into a different alien because they might as well have just been 2 different aliens to begin with. Seeing that progression doesn't mean anything to me. Starting with a real world creature and turning it into something that I've never seen before and then seeing the stepladder of how it got there, that's way more interesting. So there's a strong foundation here for a larger game, but I think they just need to scrap what they had, hone in on what did and didn't work, and then start over based on that original pitch. And the last game from Double Fine that I'm able to talk about is Kiln, and I'd say this is probably the best looking, most polished, and most well-rounded of the prototypes. There's a real strong sense of direction here, which makes sense because I'm pretty sure the guy who ended up pitching and leading this project was also a project lead for Mnemonic on the last Amnesia Fortnight. Derek Brand, his name just came back to me. Yeah, so I think you can kind of tell that this is his second time through the ringer here. It's a shame I wasn't able to play the game online. They didn't have that functionality set up at the time I was sitting down to play it. But even just molding my character out of the clay and, setting them in the kiln and then seeing how it turned out, that was fun by itself. I just liked the experimentation of trying to craft new different body shapes and stuff to see how they worked. It usually didn't work. It needs a few simple, convenient features added, like quality of life features, like when you're building your clay guy that you can reset if you just totally botch it. It makes more sense when you're in an online battle that you don't want people resetting. If you screw it up, then you're just stuck with your crappy guy. Maybe let them reset but incur a penalty of some sort if that was part of the balancing you had in mind there. So I voted for this game because I thought it sounded intriguing and I thought it would make for a really fun prototype. I don't think I really saw it having the legs and the concept to be turned into a full game, but based on how well this prototype turned out, I'm starting to see a lot of potential here for a full game. Just as a little aside, the 3 games from Double Fine here all had such strong concepts that realistically any of them could be made into a full game. I think if this game were developed further, it would definitely need single player options. I mean, if you want to build it as a strictly online game like Chivalry or something where it's just an online battle game, I'm sure that's fine, but I worry it would have like this niche little audience, not a lot of online player appeal, and so it would be really great if there was single player options to keep you busy for a little while. You could add little missions to play through and, I don't know, challenges, but mostly the ability to get in there and fight with AI would be great. And then maybe you could add some sort of split screen option so you could do local multiplayer. That would be good too. But I think you need that single player along with the multiplayer. I don't think it would work very well multiplayer only. So even though the prototype suffered from me not being able to play the multiplayer half of it, there was still a lot to see here. I really enjoyed what I was able to see, and I had a really great experience there, so I still look at this prototype very fondly. So those are the 3 Double Fine prototypes I was able to play. They actually had a few guest developers come in and do a few prototypes of their own. The first of those was Glopters by Glumberland. I wouldn't have expected that probably one of my favorite prototypes from the entire history of Amnesia Fortnight was going to come from someone other than Double Fine. The game's cute, wacky, weird, zany, other adjectives. It was just a really charming game, and everything about it just kind of like put a smile on my face and warmed my heart. And it turns out I wasn't even playing the proper game. I shared the video with the developers, and they explained what the glitch was that I had experienced and what caused it. And basically what it did is it made it so that there was no objectives. So normally there was things I was supposed to be flying around collecting, and those weren't populating, and it wasn't telling me where they were and what I needed to be doing. So I was just flying around on my own with no set goals for like 20 minutes or something like that. So I was hardly playing a game. I was just kind of playing the sandbox tech demo that showed off a few mechanics and basic gameplay. I wasn't even playing the proper game. And you know what? I still had a blast. So I think that's a really good sign. I don't know if you could turn this into a full game. Maybe. You just have your silly helicopter. There's a handful of different levels. There's a handful of different challenges you can do in each level. I kept trying to loop myself through hoops and circles and stuff. Turns out that wasn't the goal of the game. You were supposed to be collecting things. So one time through the level it's collect things. One time through the level it's a race through a specific track. The next time through the level it's go through so many hoops, and then, I don't know, you could have split screen, you're flying around and you shoot cute little candy bars at each other. I don't know, it doesn't seem like you would shoot bullets at each other in a cute game like this, but there's potential there as well. Super difficult game to master though. I could see people coming back to it a lot to try and just get better at the game. In the short time I played with it, I could feel myself getting like substantially better. I don't know if it's worth making this into a huge full game. Make it into like a $5 funny little thing that people can mess around with for a couple hours, and I think people will be more than happy with that. The next guest developer, who actually made 3 different prototypes, of which I could only play 2 because Blowing Up was multiplayer only. This was Writer's Block from Misfits Attic, and so there's not really a lot to say about this particular game. It offers both this text-based story where you can input your different prompts and try and work your way through the story. There's like one particular path you have to follow to get to the end. It was interesting that it wasn't a branching story. The story kept hitting the same beats, and then you had to try and make different choices, but it would still carry on to the next scene, but something would have changed. And I thought that was interesting because it was hard to gauge whether you had been doing things right or not, and so there was a lot of trial and error there, done in a much better way than what we saw earlier. But it was what it was. There wasn't a lot to say about that. There was a second half of it which was just kind of a juiced up Mad Libs game, and I'm always a sucker for Mad Libs. It's probably no more or less fun than other Mad Libs, except for that it just auto-fills for you, so you can, you know, have the fun for yourself, I guess, rather than having to have someone there fill it out for you. Unfortunately, this game glitched on me too, and some of the things I filled in started, instead of having like insert number 2 and stuff like that, so it started falling apart on me, so I didn't get to play it as much as maybe I would have otherwise. It was interesting, probably something that's not really in need of further developing. It was just fun for the short while. Next up is Engie, also from Misfits Attic. I would say this felt probably like the most complete prototype out of all of them. I think that might be just because it was a smaller, more simple game, so stacked up against much more grand ideas, it just felt more complete. I didn't encounter any major glitches or hang-ups or anything like that, and that's just because it was a more simplistic game, I think. It was very difficult. Holy crap, it was hard. And I had to keep starting over, and because of that, it started to feel maybe a little bit repetitive. Alright, gotta build my first turret, gotta fight through the first 8 of the simple thing, and then one of the larger things gonna come. And that's true of a lot of tower defense games, but I guess I just don't lose most tower defense games that quickly, that often, for it to start feeling repetitive. You have to make it to like the halfway stretch and start over for it to not feel like the game is just hammering you. It didn't feel like there was a lot I could be doing differently. There's a set number of creatures you can kill, there's a set number of crystals you can collect, and therefore there's a limited number of combinations of turrets and barriers and mines and stuff you can build. I obviously didn't explore all of them because I never made it very far in the game. I will say, even though I didn't explore it to its fullest, that potential of trying the different strategies seems like it could be a lot of fun. But really the game needs more levels, more variety in monster types, more skills, more things that you can build. Hell, turn it into either more of like a proper tower defense game where they're running through a maze, or treat it something more like Orcs Must Die, which honestly is what this game feels like. It's like a top-down Orcs Must Die, but you only have a very limited amount of space to work with and a very limited amount of things you can build. I think turn it into this top-down Orcs Must Die, and you have a winner there. This game already offers up to 4-player multiplayer. You could have 4 Engies running around building turrets and things like that. And so it's a shame I never got to try that. I don't know how the difficulty scales. So I don't even have to recommend that as a way to improve the game. It's something you guys already had in mind. But I think you really have a core concept here that seems like it works. It really just needs to be expanded upon. And, you know, then when you add more levels, you can start people out at the baby level rather than like that mid-level where I was getting my ass kicked. Yeah, so I say kudos for like a good, well-made prototype. It fit up there right along with the Double Fine stuff. Really, really well made. And last up we come to Pong Ball, the game made by the Double Fine community, which I think is so cool that there's a community that's willing to step forward and like participate there right along with the proper team for the 2 weeks. What's even cooler is that the Double Fine team really advocates it and supports it, and then when they released the bundle on Humble, they included the community prototype along with it. Aside from the coolness part of it, the game was like really lacking. It really didn't feel finished, the controls were lacking, the physics was kind of janky now and again, and it really just wasn't that fun. And it was really kind of missing the pinball side of things. Sure, there was bumpers and stuff, but I didn't have the pinball paddles, and so without that, it was basically just Pong with obstacles. It's kind of a shame because the previous Amnesia Fortnight, the team got together, the community I should say, got together to work on this bad golf game that was a pitch that didn't get passed through, that people really wanted to see get made. There was a ton of work and a ton of love put into that game, and they put out like a really cool prototype. So it's a shame we didn't get anything like that from the community this time around, but I really commend them for the effort. And I think a big jam like that, coordinating it online just isn't going to be easy. So good for you guys for getting a game together at all in 2 weeks. So with a little capper, I want to hand out my awards, my different awards that I invented and then voted on by myself, and now I'm assigning. This would be an interesting thing to put forward to everyone, to ask, maybe make up some of your own categories the way I completely made them up, or stick to the 5 I came up with. I'd like to hear your guys' answers to these. First up, I want to award closest to the original pitch, and that's gotta go to Kiln. I mean, the concept art that was in that original pitch is the same as what we get in the final game. The gameplay and all that is exactly what I would have expected. They executed that perfectly. The most fun, I would have to say, is Glopters. So not even a Double Fine game. Gods Must Be Hungry had a lot of frustrating jankiness to it. Kiln I ended up having to play by myself, which was unfortunate. And Darwin's Dinner was just not what I wanted out of that game. So Glopters was actually the most fun in my mind. The most potential, based strictly on the prototype, I'm tempted to award it to Kiln, but I think I will go Darwin's Dinner. Kiln is hard to see exactly where it could go from here, because it could just be a multiplayer battle thing, and really I think that might be a little too one note, and I don't know if the game would be that great. Darwin's Dinner, I think you can really see the potential there. They need to start over with a different setting and all that, but I think the potential is definitely there. Overall, the best prototype was probably Kiln. The game just felt really well polished. It felt like it was a lot of fun. It was cool to mess around with. The game looked really good. What can you say? It just came together really well. Good job to Derek Brand. The guy's a veteran at this point. I think overall the game that I most want to see made, even though like I said, any of those 3, and honestly Glopters as well, and potentially Engie, I would be interested to see any of those made into a larger game. but I think I gotta give it to The Gods Must Be Hungry. As frustrated as I was with that prototype, there was still so much there, and that original pitch is still so strong. I think keep Asif along as like an ideas guy, but maybe get a new game lead, like a new director in there. That original pitch of the platforming and the big epic scale and the battle arena and the cooking concepts and everything about it was just perfect, and you can see a lot of that in the prototype. It just is a long way away from being a playable game. But if they added the new levels and the different features that I would love to see added, absolutely, I'd buy that game in a heartbeat. So there we go, we can put a cap on Amnesia Fortnight 2017. I think that's all the thoughts that I've been meaning to share on this. Sorry that it's coming out a little bit later, like a couple weeks after everything's been done. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of it down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.